everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Digital Law News, brought today by Digital Law and hosted by Anson Evaluate. So I'm joined with my colleague Peter, who will just introduce himself in a minute. But for now, my name's Laura and I'm an apprentice solicitor at Digital Law UK, and we're just going to be running through some of this week's news stories for you today.
Indeed, thank you very much, Laura. My name's Peter. I'm a solicitor and managing director at Digital Law. And it's interesting doing this broadcast end of September when events are starting to happen. I've just spent a large part of this week in London at a conference focused on cybersecurity, and it was a face-to-face one. So it's nice to see that the world is starting to return to something like normal. But of course, as the economy gets back into the swing of things, we've got some stories about cyber attacks to share with you. So I'll pass back to you, Laura, to take us through them.
Thanks, Peter. Our first story today is starting off with a story about Apple and its vulnerabilities to a security hack. So a lot of you might know on Apple phones you can use Apple Pay, and a lot of people are using their Apple Pay to go on buses, on trains, on tubes, just to like tap in and tap out at the tube station, etc. And scientists and researchers actually from the University of Surrey and University of Birmingham have now been warning that this system is vulnerable to hackers, as it could be that hackers are taking unlimited amounts of money from their devices. So the flaw of the feature could enable hackers to bypass the iPhone's locked screen and perform contactless payments by hijacking the iPhone into thinking that it is a tube gate, when actually it's just being placed near a normal card reader that's just typically used in a normal shop.
Indeed, thanks, Laura. This is quite a scary vulnerability that seems to have been found. I'm quite used to Apple users very often saying, well, we don't have to worry about cybersecurity issues because it's Apple and it's this closed network. But interestingly, in this instance, the Apple Pay feature appears to have this vulnerability, in particular if in the settings on Apple Pay you've got the what appears to be a feature called expenses enabled. And this express travel, not expenses, express travel, if that is enabled to facilitate what we're talking about here, like contactless bus and tube travel, this is the thing that can be vulnerable. The scary thing is that the hackers can end up tricking the phone into thinking it's going through a tube gate or a bus contact. But having got into the phone, what it's then able to do is actually you can extract £1,000 potentially from the phone. So it's not like it's, you've got this limit now of £45, which you'd expect, even though it is being taken from the phone under that sort of, under that protocol. It is possible to take up to £1,000 off that account card, in particular if it's a Visa debit card that you've got enabled on there. You could be looking for either a Visa debit or Visa credit card. You could be looking at a vulnerability that means £1,000 could disappear. So it's not like it's capped at the £45, which you might have otherwise expected. And it's, until a specific patch is circulated on this, it will remain a vulnerability. But given that they've circulated news of this on the front of the Times newspaper today, you would hope that that vulnerability will be reduced sooner rather than later. But I think it highlights the fact that we're getting used to now using our mobile devices to make contactless payments. And when I say mobile devices, that includes Apple Watches as well, that have the same express travel feature enabled on it, can potentially be exploited by hackers in this way. And you can just imagine that this could be enabled so that this could happen where a hacker could do this from a distance of several meters from your device. So they could just have something enabled in their backpack on a busy tube that could then end up extracting these payments from all of the mobile devices around them on an underground carriage or on a bus, for example. So it's potentially very lucrative to a hacker with the right technology here. And by the looks of it, that technology does not have to be particularly sophisticated either.
Yeah, absolutely. I know myself, I don't really take my card anywhere with me anymore. I just use my Apple Pay all the time. So if this does happen and people do start taking advantage of this little bug, it could make a lot of people out of money.
Absolutely, and I think by looking at it, it's if this express travel feature has been enabled. So I think it's a matter of checking on your settings, and if you are using this in particular for those sort of regular commuting expenses and tapping in and tapping out each day, that's the thing that makes you vulnerable, unfortunately. So even if ordinarily a fingerprint, facial ID, or PIN code would ordinarily be necessary for you to authenticate payment, in this instance, that's circumvented by the hackers. So I think it's a good thing, if anything. This was, as I say, on the front of the Times newspaper today, because I think it's really important that commuters know about this and are able to change their behaviour if necessary.
Absolutely. So moving on to the next story then. So this is a story on Euractiv in relation to EU demands to end Russian-linked cyber attacks ahead of the German elections. So the German elections, I believe, were earlier this week. However, the EU have called for an immediate end to malicious cyber attacks by a group called Ghostwriter that have been found to be linked to the Russian state. So they've been linked to a number of attacks around the EU on EU countries. And these attacks have been targeted towards politicians and government officials, as well as members of the press and civil society as well, according to the EU. So with the German elections coming up, when this story was written, they was going to be among the group's recent attacks. So it was just quite a little warning and kind of wanting them to put a stop to this.
Indeed, this is the much vaunted interference in foreign election campaigns by hackers that we must emphasise appear to be based inside the Russian Federation, but it seems to be quite opaque in terms of whether they are or are not influenced or acting under the instructions of the Russian government. Certainly when these issues have been brought up with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, he's always said it's nothing to do with us. But increasingly, I think, certainly in the West, there appears to be the perception that even if they aren't acting under instruction from the Russian government, it certainly seems to be the case that the environment is being provided for them to operate. And I think increasingly pressure is being put on the Russian government to say, you've got to start cracking down on this because it is being facilitated from within your borders. And we're seeing that these cyber attacks could have an impact on elections in this instance, or indeed on other aspects of civil society in Europe and indeed further afield. So that's why the European Union's got involved on this. Interesting that this has been from the sort of the EU's High Representative on Foreign Affairs, Joseph Borrell, who's made these comments. And it's an attempt by the EU collectively to take a stand here, rather than individual EU nation states that are really trying to say, look, here is the evidence, we know what's happening, and please make a stop to it. So it's an attempt by the EU to sort of get onto the national stage and make a stand on this issue. But so far, when the EU has tried to make attempts to take a stand against Russia, for example, it's not been particularly effective. So let's see if it is more effective this time. This threat was issued before the German election. The German election has now taken place on Monday, and it's now going to be a matter of, well, what is there a response from Russia? Do they say, it isn't anything to do with us, or do they say, yes, we're going to start enforcement against these bodies like Ghostwriter? It's quite important when it comes to that sort of the creation of an environment that's allowing these hackers to flourish, crucially, and that's where it has an impact potentially on all consumers in Europe, most importantly. Yeah,
absolutely. So sticking on the same theme then, so this is a cyber attack that's actually taken place in the UK, and it's an umbrella payroll firm called Giant Pay. So this company actually hosts and has on their books kind of the middleman for thousands of contractors around the UK. And it's just confirmed at the beginning of this week that they have been hit by a sophisticated cyber attack that has flawed its systems and left all the workers out in the cold, as they say. So the attack actually happened on Wednesday, 22nd of September. And it has forced the Giant Pay to shut down its whole network, including its phone and email systems, as well as its whole IT infrastructure as well. and has led to the workers not being paid and not being able to get in touch with the company to kind of trace what's been happening. They did on Monday announce that they were working on a technical issue. I couldn't tell by the article itself whether they was trying to cover this up for a certain period by saying it was a technical issue, but now they have confirmed it. So hopefully more information might come as to how the attacks happened, if it was ransomware or just a cyber attack in general.
Indeed, thank you, Laura. I think this is a timely reminder of the fact that different systems are always potentially open to being compromised, and in this issue, it's a system that over 8,000 contractors have been affected by when it's come to this breach. This platform allowed for thousands and thousands of freelancers to operate, to find work, and then they'd be paid through the platform. Most importantly, it seems to be that the attack has affected that sort of virtual payroll and those payments that would be made, and that's why it's had such a big impact on those users. Don't forget, in this time of the wheels of the economy turning after the enforced COVID lockdown, there's an awful lot of people relying on these networks where they may have switched to freelancing, having had other roles prior to the pandemic, and it's a massive blow when it could be potentially the first paycheck that they've relied on, having been, say, furloughed and then left previous employment, to then find that you can't necessarily rely on the system that you've got in place is going to be a real source of anxiety, I can imagine, for a lot of users. So that's why the National Crime Agency has been involved in investigating this. And of course, as you say, Laura, it has been reported to the UK's Information Commissioner. Not an awful lot of information is available right now on it. And as you say, well, that's this ransomware, malware, what is the nature of the threat? But it is, as I say, a reminder of the vulnerabilities of systems to focused cyber attacks. And tying back to our last story, this is the damage that can be caused if you have large-scale hacking collectives operating virtually unimpeded from jurisdictions outside of the UK and the EU. These are the sorts of problems that can flow. Though, of course, we wait to find out the outcome of the investigation and where indeed the hackers in this instance may have been located. But you can see why, when we're looking at payroll information, all those juicy sort codes and account numbers, that's the reason why it will have been targeted, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why it's been reported to the ICO straight away, because it's a lot of sensitive information there, your payroll details, your national insurance. It's easy for someone to come along and steal someone's identity based on that information. That's the information you'd need. So yeah, definitely good that they've reported it.
Indeed, and of course that's under the requirement in the UK to report cyber breaches in 72 hours in line with Europe's GDPR. If we're in a different country, who knows? Sometimes you get big hacks like this that aren't disclosed because there simply isn't the regulatory requirement to do so. So, for example, in the United States, very often you only find out if if a company's been hacked, if, for example, it's a PLC and they have to report it because it would affect their results and their trading position. So it's that's one good aspect, in at least that there has to be this report that's made. And indeed, it's that 72 hours of date of knowledge. So indeed, something that could have started out as looking like an IT glitch, if in due course they then find out that, yes, we have been hacked, that's then meaning that, right, we have to go ahead and report this because of the fact that that clock does then start to tick. And as we always advise our clients, the more information you give to the regulator at the point where you've been hacked, the less likelihood you'll face regulatory enforcement. The lack of information in the public domain on this, suspect that investigation could be quite long-winded, and it'll be interesting to see what does happen. Will there be any regulatory enforcement on the back of this? Let's wait and see.
Absolutely. So that was our last story for today. Just a short one today, just a little catch up there, but we'll hope to be back with a longer episode next week covering a few more stories. Just a reminder and a thank you as well to Anson Evaluate for helping us host this. Just a reminder that there is a lot of helpful posts around cybersecurity as well, and all different subject matters on their website, and they can help you with training in relation to any of the matters as well, if that's something you're interested in.
Indeed, and we've been doing a series of different training events with Anson Evaluate, and details of those will be available shortly should you wish to watch any of the videos that are being put together. Also, I can confirm that I'll be speaking at the British Legal Technology Forum in London on Tuesday, the 12th of October. So you may see the occasional video or photo online from that event as well, which is Europe's largest legal tech expo, and it'll be really good, hopefully, to see lots of people all under one roof enjoying a conference, which of course for the last 2 years we've not been able to do. So yes, very much looking forward to that, and perhaps, you know, if any of our listeners are there and they want to come and say hello, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, that's everything we've got time for today. We do hope to see you back again next week. But just a reminder, this podcast and a webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, our website, and all the podcast channels as well. So thank you once again for listening, and we'll see you next week.